the Duke of York's legal team have failed in their bid to get a sexual abuse lawsuit against him thrown out of court.
Yes, a New York judge has ruled that a settlement deal his accuser, Virginia Giuffre, made with Jeffrey Epstein did not release him from litigation.
Well, our royal editor, Camilla Tominey, is joining us now to explain more. Morning, Camilla.
Morning,
so just
Camilla.
explain what happened last week, because the New York court unsealed a confidential 2009 deal between billionaire paedophile financier Jeffrey Epstein and Virginia Roberts Giuffre. So how does that impact Prince Andrew?
Well, that deal had suggested that back in 2009, Epstein had paid Virginia Roberts, as she was then, $500,000, around £370,000, in order for her to effectively stop any civil action she had claimed against him, but also as part of an agreement to not go after any of his associates. And the Duke of York's lawyers tried to argue that that exempted him from the civil lawsuit she's brought against him in recent times. But the judge at the time, in the hearing that we all listened into in New York last week, wasn't having much truck with that. So actually the decision he's now come to and announced yesterday wasn't that much of a surprise. He was quite brutal with Andrew Brettler, who is the Duke of York's lawyer, basically saying that that agreement didn't apply to the Duke of York because it didn't name him. It didn't even make any reference to royalty. So now we're left with, I think, three possible scenarios for Prince Andrew. One, that he does go to court and he has his day in court. And as he vehemently has protested his innocence throughout, this might be his opportunity to clear his name. Or alternatively, there is the option of him settling out of court. His team haven't ruled that out, and a figure of around $5 million has been bandied around as to what might be acceptable to Mrs. Giuffre now as a settlement, although her team is saying she'd like to have her day in court, so might not want to settle. Or his lawyers are also relying on another exemption, and that could be the fact that Mrs. Roberts now lives in Australia rather than in America. And so the Duke's legal team are trying to argue that they have no jurisdiction to try this case in New York. Again, though, that seems to be very slim hope of getting it thrown out, particularly in the Me Too era. And now that Ghislaine Maxwell has been convicted and sentenced, there's this sense that victims or survivors deserve to be heard. And I think that's very much the theme of this. So now it's down to the Duke of York as to whether he takes this head on or tries to find an alternative arrangement.
And none of these scenarios that you've just laid out there are doing anything for his reputation, are they?
No, I mean, his reputation's shot to pieces. It's about how on earth he can redeem himself. You could argue, actually, it's the biggest and most high-stakes gamble. But if he is so vehemently protesting his innocence, and indeed to the extent that he was willing to go on that Newsnight show and speak for an hour in his own defence about how he wasn't in London with the alleged victim, but in fact at Pizza Express in Woking, etc., then the only way he can truly clear his name is to go to court, fight it, and hopefully win. Because any settlement or having the case dropped on a legal technicality isn't a vindication. So actually, it might be that he has to take the fight to Mrs. Giuffre. The consequence of him losing that and in turn being accused of victim blaming doesn't bear thinking about. But as you said, Holly, where does he go from here? His reputation's already in pieces.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, Camilla.
Thank you, Camilla. Right.